Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lesbian Talk. We are going to discuss this. This is going to be the first of several episodes where we have honorary lesbian Count Jackula, and we are going to discuss horror movies, different parts every week. I am Demanda Hagen, and other people should name themselves.
I'm Omega. This is episode 72 of Lesbian Talk. When you say, it sounds so grand when you say like the first in a long-running series. It makes it sound like we're like on Radio 4 or something.
Yeah, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, this is going to be the Doctor Who and horror movie show.
Oh, why not? It's the thing is we're coming up to October, so we're getting ready.
Yeah.
That's it. But we have with us today Count Jackula from Planet Dracula. How are you doing today?
Doing fine. Greetings, Fright Nights, and lesbians everywhere. And thank you for naming me an honorary lesbian. I feel like as a man who is sexually attracted to women, I'm already halfway there. So
see, and that's like the perfect pickup line too.
Yeah,
As someone with facial hair and attraction to women and long hair, you're a perfect lesbian.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, hey, yeah, there you go.
So this week we wanted to talk about found footage horror movies. Because I think they can be done well, but I've only infrequently seen that.
This is definitely true.
I've seen quite a few of them running the gamut. Some of them are truly excellent, and like a really good example of a found footage horror movie that's really excellent is what the hell? Just go with the obvious one. Blair Witch Project is pretty good. But then there are, Blair Witch is essentially the granddaddy of the grandma of the modern found footage horror movie.
I gotta say, I saw Blair Witch in Hagerstown, Maryland, which was about 20 miles away from quote unquote Burkittsville, where it was supposed to be set.
Oh man, yeah, I've been in Hagerstown.
My roommate was a townie.
Back end of nowhere.
We had to drive 45 minutes back to campus because I was out at Shippensburg University at the time. And it was midnight, so we were driving through deserted, cow path kind of highways. And my roommate was totally freaking out.
I never saw it in the cinema. I saw it when it came out in VHS. But with found footage movies, I find that with the good ones, you have to get your mind in a weird Zen type place where you got to forget on one level that it's not real. You got to try and convince yourself it's real, otherwise they don't work at all. If you can't on some level convince yourself, do you know what I mean?
See, I was thinking about this the other day because I know we talked about it. We talked about it when we did the vlog for As Above, So Below, and I was thinking that one way that you could do a found footage horror movie would be pasting together quote unquote fake government tapes. This was a real experiment done by the government in the 1960s, and only now has this been declassified. And people are going through, and they're like, wow, no, really, check this out.
Well, yeah, but at that point, it's alien autopsy.
Well, it could be something
it's not quite a found footage. It's more like a mockumentary horror movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it's still a fine genre for someone to try, but it's not quite the same thing. But when it comes to As Above, So Below, I had a brilliant idea after we did the vlog for it about how they could really improve that. Because, okay, for that you've got alchemy, you've got the Philosopher's Stone, you've got hell being inside underneath Paris,
which apparently, if you ask Sad Panda, is the truth.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Okay.
This is the one that's set. I haven't seen this movie. This is the one that's actually set in the Paris
catacombs.
It promised so much and delivered so few.
But I came up with a much better setup for it. How about this for setup? Instead of the Paris catacombs, use the Odessa catacombs in Ukraine. These things which are so large that they have never actually been mapped properly. There is thousands of miles of thing there that is not guarded, not defended, you can't stop people from going into it because they used to mine underneath the city.
Yeah, I think I read in a Cracked article years ago that there was someone who went down there after a party on a dare and got lost, and they found her body years later.
Tens to hundreds of people have died in those catacombs from getting lost. And how about, you got a bunch of urban explorers decide to map them, and they're full of hubris and stuff, and they bring a camera because they're going to do a homemade documentary about how awesome they are, and then they all end up getting lost, going insane, killing each other, and dying. and then 5 years later someone finds the bodies, and they put the tape together.
Yeah, you could do that. That sounds like the perfect scenario for a found footage film.
Because the main problems with found footage films, A, the setup is absolutely ridiculous, or B, you don't have a reason for them to have the cameras going all the time. With
the best footage, or the best GoPros, and the best battery packs in history.
Yeah, the found footage. Found footage films.
One of the biggest problems I continually have. I actually feel like one of the biggest problems of the found footage genre has to do with its cheap production quality and low production values. Not that is inherently a problem, but because it seems so because it seems so easy to do, a lot of people who aren't very good try to make one.
Yeah, it's a bit like slasher movies in the 80s. But But slasher movies are easier to do than found footage. Found footage is horror generally are either they're really easy to make, and they're really hard to get right. Found footage movies are even easier to make and even harder to get right. You got such a tightrope.
Yeah. You have this very, very slight margin of error as far as verisimilitude is concerned.
Yeah.
There's one movie that is kind of a perfect example of, wow, you had this really interesting idea, and whoa, you just did it absolutely wrong. It's a movie called The Poughkeepsie Tapes.
Oh, I've heard of that, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I heard about it from a bunch of horror fans, and I was like, all right, I'll check it out. I watched it, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This movie is terrible.
Same
and
director
the reason
as
it's terrible,
Above, So Below.
Yeah. Well,
Now we understand.
Yeah. Poughkeepsie Tapes. How to put it? The biggest problem that movie has, if I'm to point at one single thing, is the fact that everyone in that movie is acting, and you find yourself going, "Wait, what? Why does this person feel like they're acting?" The whole point is to make this feel real, but you're like talking to a cop, and the cop feels like he's acting, and you're just like, what? No, a cop wouldn't say that. A cop wouldn't get this emotional. Like, a cop he sees horrible things, and even if this is the worst thing he's ever seen, he's going to be very low-key about it. It's like everyone felt like they had to show emotion, but they didn't realize how much of acting, in particular in a found footage movie, because it's supposed to feel real, is kind of about concealing your emotions, because that's what we do normally.
Yeah. Like, let's see, other famous ones. Last Broadcast, it's been many years since I've seen that, but I recall...
Yes. Last Broadcast, yes.
I recall it being good until the end. I can't remember what my issue was, but that's what I remember from like a decade ago when I saw it. There's also...
It's one of those... It's an uneven one. It's an uneven one, but it's interesting in that it was a found footage movie that came out actually before Blair Witch.
Yeah, it was the precursor. It was like the Pixies to Blair Witch's Nirvana.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of putting it, yeah.
I had friends
Except
in
I
college.
actually prefer the Pixies to Nirvana. So,
I had friends in college when Blair Witch first came out that were convinced it was real. You're like, yeah, but if you go onto their www website, because that's how long ago this was, you'll see that they're really still missing. And I was like, I don't know. I think the FBI would have gotten involved, or I think their families would have kept them from releasing this movie if that was the truth. No, see, they did.
I think they wouldn't be doing press tours if they had actually been lost.
Yeah, but back then, because the net was so new, and this was the first time that was done, it had an air of believability that later ones just don't have. It made it easier to believe. Yeah,
that's like, on Netflix is always recommend, because I watch a lot of nature documentaries, Netflix is always recommending the Bigfoot show, and I don't understand how the Bigfoot show, it's a show about people who are hunting Bigfoot. Like, I can't understand how shows that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Or, like real ghost hunting shows, how people stay hooked on this idea that something's going to happen, because if something had happened, if they'd found Bigfoot, you would have heard 8 months before this went into production. You know, like this still would have been in Post, and it would have been in Time magazine. We found Bigfoot. It's over. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like something like that, you were talking about a horror mockumentary type thing. Yesterday while editing stuff, I watched The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is not quite a found footage, but it's similar to what you were describing. But it was about the swamp, the skunk ape.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's more of a documentary, mockumentary or whatever. You know. Yeah, it's that one's interesting because you're trying to figure out like how much of what these people are talking about is actual things that people experienced and are making up because that's what they actually did as opposed to being scripted.
Yeah.
Well, I like when there's a clear division because, again, a Netflix recommendation was it looked like this documentary about conspiracy theorists, which I find fascinating because I want to understand, as a psychology student, I want to understand what goes on in the human brain that, we have the condition where people become rampant conspiracy theorists. And I'm watching this and I'm like, really, this is not a very objective documentary. And then I did a little bit of Googling, come to find out it's actually a horror movie. And I was like, wait a second.
Wait, which movie was this?
I think it was just called The Conspiracy, and it's a Canadian movie. And I wasted like 25 minutes of this, so I immediately turned it off and watched Mythbusters for spite.
I've some found footage movies, it's like they're so tone deaf in what the genre tries to achieve that they just go with the most insane plots they can. My favorite is Apollo 13. The one with the moonrock spiders.
Yeah. Let me make sure. Apollo.
I think Apollo 13 was the one with Tom Hanks.
Apollo 13 was the actual like Ron Howard, Tom Hanks one. Let's see, there was Apollo 18.
Yes.
And, yes, Apollo 18.
Or with this one, where they also make the mistake about how did they find the footage, because most of the footage you can be like, oh, they're broadcasting it back to Earth, and that's fine. But they also state that they have an 8mm camera thing there, and they have this 8mm footage that they say they're going to they're collecting together to send back to Earth, and then the ship gets blown up. Yet the 8mm somehow escaped to Earth after it survived the explosion.
And the because the moon is not sheltered from solar radiation the way that the Earth is with an atmosphere, wouldn't the radiation have exposed the film? Possibly. Or is that not something that's real?
I don't know.
They got that thing in like a radiation shielded like.
Oh, that's a good point.
Just
because otherwise, how would they
in real life? Otherwise, all the film would constantly expose, and then you get nothing.
But there's also
there was another one. There was another one where like the found footage, you understood why with the found footage gimmick, you were like, okay, look, just roll with it, because like this makes no goddamn sense. Which is Frankenstein's Army.
Was that even a found footage? I didn't realize.
That's a found footage movie. It is totally a found footage movie. The problem is you're like, wait. It's World War II, and we're watching this in like HD color, obviously filmed at like 45, 60 frames per second.
It's revolutionary Nazi HD technology.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, bullshit. Why did you even do that? But with that said, it's actually a fun movie. So if you can get around that, which is kind of a gigantic leap.
Now I want to watch it.
I recommend watching it. It's not that bad. Particularly, the thing that's really cool is when you get to the end and they've got like all those like BioShock like zombies walking around. Like that's cool. It's not scary. It's just cool.
There was okay. Have you ever seen Project? I think it's Area 407, something like that. Where you start off this found footage, and they're in a plane, and then there's people, then the plane crashes, and it's well done, and then they're in this sort of desolate area, and they're being attacked by a monster. And then then at the very end, you discover that they're being attacked by dinosaurs. And then you have like this government guy comes in and like shoots the last person, and this government guy who picks up the camera, so the implication is this government guy who shot someone picks up the camera and he's going to release the tape himself.
And not face court-martial whatsoever.
Yeah, but...
What was this movie called again?
It was called Area 407, something like that. But there's actually another dinosaur found footage movie. It's called The Dinosaur Project.
Tape 407?
Could be, yeah.
No. There's a Tape 407, and then there's an Area 407. Oh, wow.
I think watch both. Just see which one is better.
Oh, wow.
I think it's Tape 407.
See, for all of these, though,
let's see. The Mesa Reserve Incident.
Yeah, that's Tape 407. There's also, like, the Banshee.
There is also an Area 407, which I think is the one you're looking at because it's got dinosaurs in the advertisement.
Okay, well, so does Tape 407. So
maybe it's an alternate title kind of thing. I'd have to research.
But there's also there's the Banshee chapter, which is about the Philadelphia experiment.
It's not about Ireland? It's a wasted title.
Oh, that's that. Yeah, I'm about to say, like, oh man, is it like found footage movie about a banshee? That'd be awesome.
That would, but it's like, nah, we're just gonna
Darby O'Gill and the Little People with a GoPro.
I actually love Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Like, I love that movie.
But the other one, but with that, the main character, well, not the main character, but one of the main characters is Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Found footage movies, you gotta cast actors that you're not gonna recognize, otherwise believability gone.
Yeah, but the same actor also played the head policeman in Monk for years and years.
It's just... But did you know there is a found footage movie where they go to Antarctica to discover evidence that Frankenstein's monster exists?
What?
Yeah, the Frankenstein theory, yeah.
Of all the things you could have used Antarctica for. Seriously?
It's...
You know what would be really great? Ooh, I just thought of it. I'm copywriting it, you guys. A found footage movie that takes place in the Arctic, looking for, what happened to Franklin's ships, and it was something supernatural, and they have GoPros with them. I'd watch that.
See, that's a good concept.
I love it. I love history.
Have you guys seen, since we're talking about found footage, have you guys seen Wreck?
No.
REC, I have not. I have not seen the remake either.
Man. Wow. Quarantine?
Yeah.
If you watch Wreck, you don't need to watch Quarantine, because the problem with Quarantine is that it removes the supernatural aspect, and the supernatural aspect is the most shocking part of that movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It's really cool. It also, because they removed the supernatural aspect, they removed what makes the final shot of the movie so scary, which is the girl being pulled away from the camera. That's terrifying because, like, moments before you see what's doing it.
It turns out it was Ebola the whole time.
Yeah. Whereas in Quarantine, it's just like, oh, it's just Ebola. You're like, oh, what? Well, then why is she being dragged off? Oh, the government did it. I'm like, I'm sorry. It looks spoilers ahead. I'm sorry. Government cover-up of a Quarantine is not as terrifying as Demon from Hell. It's just not.
Shows what you know.
Thanks, Obama.
The St. Francisville experiment as well, which was based on the horrible torture woman, Madame Delphine Lalaurie in New Orleans as well. But that was an early one. But
so what would have to happen to make not the perfect found footage, but the most effective found footage horror movie? Like if you could put together like anything and say it's a mistake to do this, but you definitely should do that.
I would.
It depends on what you're going for. Like, are you talking about what would make the most entertaining one or the scariest?
See, I don't know, because I know people like you guys who watch horror movies to be entertained, but then I know people who, watch horror movies just to be frightened because they find them truly frightening, even if it's just like a silly slasher movie.
Well, there's
yeah. Well, if you want just the the shock and the scare, really honestly, the Paranormal Activity series. Like, if you just want that like exhilaration of just like something scary happening very quickly.
Although, except for the marked ones.
I haven't seen the marked ones, but I've seen the first 4 of the the official series.
Oh, honey, is that the one that you and Aaron saw?
Me and Aaron saw a bunch of found footage horror movies that were, and they all sort of bled together. But yes, we saw the marked ones.
Oh, isn't that the one where she, like, has a baby because of a cult or something?
No, that's a different one.
Oh, sorry.
That's like the main plot of Paranormal Activity.
She has a baby because of a cult.
We watched several times. We sort of got mixed up in different ones, so I think we created accidentally, like, random found footage movies that we talked about based on other ones, just because our memories merged together. But to make a good found footage movie, this wouldn't be an entertaining one. If you want to make an actual good horror movie in the found footage genre, you gotta have it be believable. You've got to have some sort of situation where it can happen in real life, and you've got to have a believable reason why the footage was found. If you don't have those things, you can't make a quote-unquote good horror film. You can make an entertaining one, but you can't make one that's genuinely frightening unless you make it incredibly believable.
Yeah, and also the other key element is a character you care about what happens to them.
Oh, that
like
definitely wasn't As Above, So Below. We hated that bitch from the get-go.
Oh, yeah, we did. But I don't know if it's as necessary with the found footage one, because if you convince people that it's real, then you don't actually need to like them. If you convince them that it's a real person.
Yeah. I'll go with that. I'll absolutely agree with that.
But yesterday I got a copy of the Collinswood story, which I haven't watched yet. But this was an idea I had years ago, and I could never work out a way to do it. And then I discovered that this film exists, and someone did my idea, which is a horror film entirely done with webcams.
Huh. Yeah. There are actually a couple of those, and some of them are really good. Like one of the segments of, I would be remiss if I didn't bring this series up. One of the segments of VHS in the first VHS movie, it was shot entirely with webcams because it's a conversation that's happening over Skype.
The first one I ever saw of, and that sort of was an episode of Urban Gothic, which was a webcam episode. It was like a zombie apocalypse entirely done with webcams. It was wonderful.
Oh, that sounds cool. I actually haven't had a chance to watch the Urban Gothic series except for the episode, the show you did on the series.
But
have you seen Evidence?
That I have not seen.
Yeah, Evidence is a found footage movie that really falls apart in the final act, because another thing that I think you definitely need for a found footage film is you have to know where everything's going and why, even if you never explain it to the audience.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
They kind of have like an inner mythology.
Yeah. Like, the thing that's great about the Blair Witch is that the Blair Witch's mythology is so fleshed out, even if the Blair Witch herself does not actually exist in the movie. It could just be a crazy guy out in the middle of nowhere killing people. But because you have that rich mythology and you have those two potential answers and each of those answers works.
Well, I tell you what, I ended up seeing the movie 3 times. Once because the first time we went to see it, the second time because one of our friends had an exam the next day, so we took her the next night, and the third time when I got back from university. But the last 5 minutes in the old abandoned house made the whole movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely it does. It's one of those, like, the movie takes, how long does that movie take? It's only like an hour and a half, right?
I think so. It's pretty short. I remember it.
Yeah, it's pretty short. Like, it like takes like an hour and 20 minutes to really get going, but it could not happen any faster.
It's a bit like Ring, the original Japanese Ring. There is one scare in the entire film, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
That's a partner with movies these days.
With Blair Witch, it's amazing. The film avoided almost all of the problems with the found footage genre, completely by accident, because it was so early. Everyone else, it's like no one else looked at Blair Witch and saw why it worked, and they decided, we'll just do it because it's cheap.
So they had time to figure out how to screw up yet.
Yeah, like, we didn't realize how hard it was to do this genre properly, so we actually managed to do it somehow. Wow.
Yeah. I know. Like, there's like, when I think of really good found footage movies, there's like Blair Witch, Wreck, Chronicle. Have you seen Chronicle?
Chronicle, I have not seen yet.
It's a little outside of horror,
Yeah, it's a superhero story.
But it's not a superhero story.
Well,
if
they get
anything, it's definitely superpowers, but if anything, it's actually a supervillain story. It's a lot closer to it's a lot closer to Akira done as a found footage movie.
Oh, okay. I'd watch that.
Yeah. If you haven't seen Chronicle, watch it. It's great. They cover, the thing that's amazing about that movie is they make a believable scenario where all the footage and all the cameras and everything that's happening makes sense simply because you're dealing with people who have telekinetic powers. So the camera is always following them just because they're controlling it.
That's pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, it was really clever. It was super clever.
That was done by Max Landis, wasn't it? No, he wrote it.
Yeah. It was written by Max Landis and it was directed by Josh Trank.
It would be remiss if we didn't mention Diary of the Dead.
Oh, Diary of the Dead.
See, it took you a while to remember, didn't it?
It was a great deal of loathing when you said that.
Oh, yeah, that Diary of the Dead. Basically the George Romero get off my lawn movie, right?
Well, I quite liked it. My big problem was that basically they set it in a completely new continuity. Because the zombie outbreak was starting 20 years later. I wouldn't have minded it if it was set in the primary universe, because I like the fact that the Romero zombie films had one continuity, even if the characters didn't continue on.
Yeah. That was the thing that really worked about like Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, and even Land of the Dead, because it's the same continuity.
Yeah.
And, these films, none of them are perfect, none of them are god-awful, it's just they're all different and they're sort of informed by their time. And the idea of doing a found footage movie in that universe, that's perfectly fine. I think that's a great idea. But you completely created a new continuity, you motherfucker.
Yeah, it doesn't have that same... It's like you're trying to have the cachet of the Night of the Living Dead series, but you've just wrecked that by making it a new continuity.
Yeah, it's a bit like Marvel 1603, where it's like the same events happen, just at a different time scale. It's like,
I read that, actually, even though I don't usually read comic books. I was at the library one day, and I found it.
But, and Survival came afterwards. It wasn't great either, but it's like, God, I don't really understand the hatred that Diary gets. It's got a lot of the problems of a lot of found footage films, but apart from it rebooting the franchise, I don't have any massive issues with it.
The biggest problem that I had with it is that there was definitely, for me, there was definitely a moment where I was like, George, are you just mad because kids these days watch the YouTubes? Like, where is this coming from?
He
OMG, LOL zombies.
Yeah. Man, they had just straight up done that. That might have actually been amazing.
For years, Romero and some guys who worked on Rocky Horror were trying to get a zombie rock musical off the ground.
Oh man, that was
if only they'd done it now.
So basically, George Romero with Richard O'Brien.
It was Richard O'Brien. I think Jim Sharman was involved as well. It was going to be called It was going to be called Diamond Dead. It was about a glam rock band, or just a rock band that died, became zombies, and they continued being a band.
If only they waited until like a year or two ago, that would have made so much bank.
Yeah, he was trying to get it off the ground for years, and it never worked.
Oh, that is too bad. That sounds fantastic.
And now everything's about zombies.
Yeah, wah, 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 wah.
But regretfully, we are going to have to wind down because we are running out of time. But, as we said, this is the first in the series, so we will be doing this again. And, Jackula, where can people find you, should they wish to look?
Well, there are two places you can find me. You can find me on... you can find me both on www.thecountjaculashow.com, and soon the Count Jackula Show will be premiering on thatguywiththeglasses.com, so you can look at those in both places.
gonna have to rename the show That Guy with the HorrorReviewers.com.
I know, right? So, honey, what did we watch this week?
We watched Drew.
We did not.
Drew
we
is when you
Time Heist.
Drew is what happens when you put Doctor and Who together.
We watched
Drew.
the Time Heist.
I was really excited about this one because I thought they were going to go to the 70s and, steal Tim Brooke Taylor, the comedian, but then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I misread it. It's not Tim Heist, it's Time Heist.
Blink, blink, blink.
Tim Brooke Taylor was merely in Monty Python.
Oh.
The only reason he wasn't is because he didn't script write or write sketches, he just acted.
Anyway, Doctor Who. I really like this episode. Like, really, a lot. And you know how I knew that I liked it? Because I realized 2/3 of the way through it that I was so, drawn into the episode, I was forgetting to look for things to nitpick. It's true.
That is your definition of a good piece of art.
Yeah, if it, draws you in, so you're like, oh, I forgot to pay attention. Okay, I know that sounds very not correct, but that's how I felt. I mean, there were a few things I was like, well, I guess if you think about it logically. But then I was like, nah, it doesn't matter. It was good. I liked it.
And I will give my short review, which is...
Oh, no, here we go.
Like the rest of the season, it's not bad enough for me to do a Twatty Who review of.
Will you never be pleased?
I'm totally capable of being pleased.
Never be pleased?
I am totally capable. I'm going to do a video about the best episodes of New Who and why they weren't terrible. But this one, I've noticed just... especially with this season, but probably with season 7 as well, that New Who would regularly steal ideas and concepts and random little things from Classic Who. Everything from entire plots to occasionally just little quirky little moments that everyone assumes, oh, this show is so quirky. Of course it is. You're mining stuff from 26 years of another show for the good stuff. But this season, they've been mining it from New Who.
I thought this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it. And one of the things that I liked the most about it was you got to see the Doctor actually, again, being really smart and scientific and intelligent and logical. And I liked that. I really liked that.
There was a bit where he looked like William Hartnell whenever cybernetic guy yells at him because the mutant woman was killed. And then the Doctor's like, yeah, and then he walks off and you got this close-up in his face and it's like, for a couple of seconds, he looks like Hartnell, which I did appreciate.
Maybe that was intentional.
But Capaldi, I still like Capaldi. They promised us a complete redo of the tone of the show, and it's the same crap.
Yes, but it's not as, flippity and everything's fine and I'm a young kid who dances around and acts silly. I never act serious, even when I'm in serious shit. So now... shit's got real, yo, and so is the Doctor.
Well, those are the same alterations. And you can
quote me on that.
Those are the same alterations that happen with any change of Doctor. Moffat promised a complete change to the tone of the show itself, and a revamp of how it would be done, which I went into it hoping to see.
Were you upset that it was a happy-ish ending?
No, I was more upset that the happy-ish ending was basically the twist ending from Hyde. You remember Hyde from season 7?
Yeah.
Where it was all like, this isn't a horror story, this is a love story. Hyde, which is
but
all
it never was a horror story. I was thinking about this while they were messing with their hammerhead teller. And I like the fact that it was called the teller, and it sends to guilt, because it's a very nice, triple entendre, that, a teller works at a bank, but if you have tells in poker, that's little ways that people know what you're thinking, and I thought that was kind of cool. But, so, I realized that it wasn't really the monster. I know there always has to be a monster involved, otherwise the BBC will pull their funding and stuff like that. But it wasn't really the monster, it was kind of just a part of what was going on.
Oh yeah, but my comparison with Hyde is that you got the story, which appears to be one thing, and then the thing that is supposedly the monster is revealed to not be the monster, but it's just in love with another one of his same kind, which is revealed at the end. Now, it worked better in this one than it did at Hyde. It totally ruined Hyde. Hyde, which also featured a lost time travel... early time traveler who was, had to be rescued by the Doctor.
Yeah, but the alien wasn't a time traveler. It was just they got a hold of the last two of their species.
Oh, I know, but the thing with the time traveler, that was about Listen as well. See, Listen and this were basically big elements of it were lifted from Hyde in season 7. This is my point, that this season it's lifting random elements from older episodes, and it's just really noticeable.
Well, I think that the main gist of it was kind of like one of those like 1970s, like The Italian Job kind of total crime, gritty, rob a bank kind of things.
Ocean's 11 type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were. I can see that they were going for that.
And I like that. I thought that was good.
It
felt fresh, and nobody felt like they were, like their characters made sense with how they were acting, and
Yeah, it was interesting concept. Although, okay, the Capaldi doctor takes no crap, yet he's quite happy to allow this horrible, horrible, horrible woman, who at the end is revealed to be all remorseful and stuff. He is perfectly fine with allowing her to live to old age with a bunch of money, just in order to save the web of time. He assists her in getting rid of some of her guilt by rescuing the teller from her previous self. When it's like, Capaldi Doctor really should be all like, no, fuck you, I'm not going to do that. I don't care if this is a paradox. You are going to be punished and killed for being a horrible person.
Well, I kind of got the feeling that he went along with it because he kind of seems to be trying to get Clara's attention and be like, come on, be my companion, it'll be fun. Don't date other guy. This is more important, things and stuff. So he kind of might have been more willing to go do it if he thought he could rope Clara along for an adventure.
That's entirely possible. Someone compared Capaldi's doctor to basically like a divorced father who gets weekends with his daughter.
Yes, that would be pretty accurate.
Although I kind of get the feeling that Capaldi's doctor just sort of sits there for like 5 days a week, pining over the time he can't hang out with Clara, sort of like wandering around going insane, and then he's just like, oh, Clara has a weekend, let's go grab Clara. And it's like, I get that Moffat is trying to rearrange the old New Who idea of having the companion be connected with regular life, like what happened with Rose and all.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to change that by having them sort of, the Doctor picks them up for adventures. And I think it's a decent idea to do every so often, but I kind of wish they weren't doing it with Clara. It's like, we saw that with the Pawns a lot, mm-hmm. and I would much rather it if, maybe the next companion, the companion gets on the TARDIS with the Doctor, goes on an adventure, then there's something goes wrong with the TARDIS and they can't get home. The sort of thing that happened in the 60s. That would be, it would be a nice thing for drama as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, I've always wondered about, and this, I think I talked about this like a while ago on the podcast. The idea that when the companion is with the Doctor, it kind of leads I don't want to say a tear, but a rend in the tapestry of time. Because, so all of those times that Rose's mom was like, oh no, where's Rose? I am ever so worried about her. And all that potential pain that she suffered, which was erased and it never even occurred, the second that whatever is holding up Rose and the Doctor is resolved, and they go back to the moment before her mom thinks she's missing. So I always wonder about that. Like, all the stuff that happens in the absence of companions that is erased as never happening. And I have postulated, and don't anyone take this idea, if I ever was going to write Doctor Who fanfiction, that if there was an enemy of the Doctor's who was not quite as powerful with time as the Daleks or the Time Lords, like maybe like a race just starting to discover time technology, could use those rends in potentia to track down the Doctor quantumly.
Yes, that would be like a more of a classic Who idea, because
Sorry.
No, I'm not saying that it actually happened. It's the sort of idea that would be done in the classic series, because in the classic show, Daleks and Cybermen and all had very basic time travel technology. Now the Cybermen's ability is to appear whenever the story says they should be, regardless of whether it makes sense, and the Daleks now are masters of time because, fuck it.
Why not? But yeah, like, and again, I think next episode's going to be more her faffing about with Pink, who I'm trying to let grow on me, but...
The next episode, which has got the Doctor hanging around his school, just like Season 2's school reunion. While the Doctor's trying to act normal, just like the Lodger.
But he uses his name, John Smith, that he always uses.
He claimed to be called John Smith in school reunion as well when he was going undercover as he went undercover as a teacher, if I remember correctly, while Rose was a dinner lady. And they met up with Sarah Jane.
Oh, was that the one where... Oh, no, that's a different one, where Joe Grant is also there.
Oh, yeah, that's episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures. This was the story that introduced Sarah Jane into the New Who.
Oh, that's good.
I got a feeling possibly... Okay, you've got the same people the bosses of New Who have been involved in it for 8 years. You run out of story ideas. This happens naturally with storytellers.
Well, then go to sci-fi writers. I mean, I know Neil Gaiman writes episodes occasionally. Like, are there not a million really talented sci-fi writers that they could go to, like, 6 months in advance and say, hey, you know, you're a really well-respected sci-fi writer, and you've written a lot of books, and you're always writing TV shows and stuff.
There's 3 reasons why that doesn't happen. 1, the team is very insular. They only like to hire people that they know. This is old Who would not do this, new Who does. Another reason is that they constantly demand rewrites. And several people have only written one script and never come back because of that. Rob Shearman, who wrote Dalek, is the prime example. And another reason is quite often people, even people who are involved, they approach them with an idea, and then like the boss is like, no, I got a better idea, and then gives them this storyline which is, again, one of their silly ideas. Like the guy who wrote Time Heist, his second story he wrote was Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
I actually enjoyed that.
I liked that one too. It was something different. And I wanted to see a TARDIS set story for a while. But his original idea was that he wanted to do a prequel to the Robots of Death, showing this guy who begins hating humanity, and he's raised by robots and wants to save the robot oppressed slave race from humans, and how he became like an origin story for him. So this would have been entirely demented, being a prequel to a Fourth Doctor, and then Moffat's like, nah, Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. It's set up in such a way to not allow other people's outside ideas.
Well, that's not helpful.
That's a problem.
Or, if they just want to keep it, within, like, BBC kind of stuff, why not some of the big Finnish writers?
Because they want to keep it insular for their own thing.
But they technically are doing stuff that's technically licensed by the BBC.
Yeah, but New Who, they keep it insular. They have several rules. They will not allow anyone who wrote for the classic show to write for the new. Several writers of the classic show have approached them saying they'd like to write for them.
I didn't know this. That's terrible.
They've all been told, no, we're not, because they want to keep... They have apparently very high standards of who they trust. In fact, in New Who, the only people who are allowed to write final drafts of their own scripts are the people who have run their own shows in the past. So, Mark Gatiss, Chris Chibnall, and Stephen Moffat.
Although Mark Gatiss has written a few of the books, didn't he? Because I know one of the ones that I gave to my mom he wrote.
He also started with BBV, but he co-does Sherlock with Stephen Moffat, so he's trusted. However, there are a lot of people who write for New Who don't get to write their final draft. It's credited to them, but because they have never, been the boss of a show, they are not trusted to write the finished episode.
Well, is that like a BBC rule, or do you think that will change if Stephen Moffat leaves?
This is a New Who rule. It's done that way since Russell T Davies. They still do it this way. Season 8, most episodes are credited to the main writer and Stephen Moffat.
Oh yeah, I saw that today. It was like so-and-so, someone else, and Stephen Moffat.
But the reason they're doing that is because this is how they've operated since year 1 of New Who. They're just now giving the showrunner who does rewrites a credit. But this is why I think the show is so samey in tone, because it's being set up to be such a way. Plus, you got the fact that Season 7 and Season 8 are not having any two-parters. So they're having to come up with 12 or 13 original ideas every single season, and there's like one person working on ideas.
Why don't they do multiple parters anymore?
Because they don't want to. I don't really understand why. I think the multiple parters work better, but they don't want to do it. And this is just a breeding ground for running themselves into the dirt, idea-wise. And this is what I think is happening.
Well, I still like this episode.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I liked big elements from it. It's just, I really wish the show was not running itself into the ground idea-wise.
Yeah. Well, next week's episode promises to be all sorts of awkward.
Well, I got a feeling I'm gonna be really angry next time, because we're in Coal Hill School again, and yet still no Ian Chesterton cameo, because that's the school that Ian and Barbara worked at. The guy
maybe he could be like a cameo, like a grandfather coming to pick up his grandchild. Well, I'm here to get my grandchild from school.
Well, he's the head of the...
Here's me in profile, and here's my face. It's me, Ian Chesterfield, did you know?
I think they should, but they're not going to do it. He could have appeared in the 50th anniversary. He could have appeared in the other episodes. But we did see that he is the head of the governors of the school, which is nice, but in like a sign. But apparently either William Russell is too sick, even though he appears at cons all the time, and he's very spry for a 90-something-year-old, and he appeared in the Adventure in Time and Space. He had a cameo there. I really don't want to think nasty things about New Who, but it's like they really want to keep old Who away from it. They want to mine it. They want to borrow ideas. They want to remake
almost kind
stuff.
of, like, from what you're saying, makes me feel like they're embarrassed.
It could be, and I really hope that's not the case. But I got the feeling I'm going to complain about, yet again, we have an older member of the Classic Who thing who has a perfect time to be slotted in to have a cameo or something, or an appearance, to honor the old show, is going to be ignored. And I really don't want to get a situation like with Nicholas Courtney, where the actor dies and he never got to appear in the new show again, because this is melodramatic, but I'm not going to forgive New Who for not having Nicholas Courtney in it. They had 6 years for him to appear. And I met him after New Who started him, before he died, and he said he wanted to appear. And he could not understand why they hadn't asked him. From what I've read, there's a possibility that he was asked at one point and he was too sick, because he was in his 80s when he died. But that's not been confirmed.
Well, at any rate, I liked this episode and I'll defend it.
It had good sections. I really liked the concave head, which it's a bit unfortunate if people actually have that, because some people do, and then kids are like, oh, they're a Doctor Who monster. But Doctor Who has had a bad relationship with people with disabilities. Yeah. Let's be honest about it. Some nasty body horror like that is just perfect for a Doctor Who scare for kids. That should have been like that would have been a wonderful cliffhanger. That image is going to stay with young people who watch it today for all their lives, and that's what Doctor Who should do.
I agree. But now it's time for that part of the show that we couldn't get rid of, even though we tried. Giovanni's trivia question. And Giovanni, are you with us today?
Yeah, boss, here I am. You know what? I am so excited because I have a favorite mammal this week. That's right. It's Stephen LaFontaine. That's at Steve Buh on Twitter. He knew the correct answer, that it was, in fact, Teddy Roosevelt. It was Teddy Roosevelt that led the blushing bride down the aisle. So you are my favorite mammal this week? Okay, so this week, this one probably, hopefully a lot of more you're going to know. So you know what, Ben and Jerry, they make the ice cream? Well, here's a question for you. How did they learn to make that ice cream? What magical guru did they pay off? Who taught Ben and Jerry how to make ice cream? So if you know the answer, as soon as this goes up on Blip, tweet at the Omega Geek. That's at the Omega Geek on Twitter with your answer. You will be my favorite mammal for next week.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly. But it's time for me to go, so I will see you all next week, my adoring radio public.
I like Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Oh, so do I.
I like it a lot. But anyway, that has been Lesbian Talk. I have been the Omega Geek, and who do you want to have been this week?
Liam Neeson.
Random, but alright. I'll see you next time, everybody.